Wow, welcome to my last or one of my last tutorials here in Adobe Illustrator. You've made it. So what we're going to be talking about now is the ins and outs of pattern design in Adobe Illustrator. So in order to do that, in order to practice creating your own original patterns, I'm going to come to File and Open. I have navigated out to my Chapter 11 folder. Chapter 11 Demos, Working with Patterns, and I'm going to open up Illustrator Patterns. Okay, and what I've done here is I've designated 5 artboards, 5 pages. And the assignment is to design 5 of your own original patterns. Now, in order to do this, I don't need my layers panel. We're just going to be working inside these boxes. What I do need is my swatches. I'm going to tear that out and I'm going to pull the bottom edge down because my patterns are going to be stored right here at the end of the rest of these patterns. And the whole point of this is to show you how to generate your own original patterns, because every Illustrator application on everybody's computer has access to the exact same patterns. And I don't want to use those same patterns. Okay, so here's one thing you got to be aware of. When you make patterns, they will be stored on your Swatches panel for that Illustrator file. Every new Illustrator file you create resets the swatches, and I'm going to show you that right here. With this file open, I'm going to go to File and New. Right up here at the top, I'll click Print. Over here on the right, I'm going to click Tabloid, which is a bigger 11 by 17 sheet of paper. I'll make my measurements inches. I'm going to keep the orientation of the page to a vertical sheet of paper, and I'll click Create. And very similar to the page that we were just looking at before, what I did is I started with a rectangle and I just clicked and dragged a big rectangle like that. Okay, whenever I'm done, I go to my black arrow. Just so you can see this, right up here is my stroke. So I just made thicker outlines like that. I'll just set it to 10. And that's pretty much what I did with that other page where you're going to design your own 5 patterns. Okay, in order to see what Illustrator comes with, I'm going to hold my space bar and kind of push this over a little bit, move my swatches over. And in the bottom left corner, okay, I'm going to select this box. In the bottom left corner of your Swatches panel are your swatch libraries. I'm going to click that and come down to Patterns. And you have 3 categories of patterns. Basic, and anything under Basic is going to be black and white patterns. So you have dot patterns, line patterns, or in this case, textures. So I'm going to click on that. Then you get a separate little panel. Okay, and if you're not sure what a pattern is or what it looks like, click on it. And this is my pattern. Now, for argument's sake, I'm going to zoom in on this just so I can really closely see what that pattern looks like right there. And I'll click on each one. There's a burlap pattern, horizontal and vertical lines. Capsules look like little sprinkles on a donut. And I'll just keep clicking these and you can see what they do. Okay, just click rapidly through these. And we'll go down in the second row here, do a couple of these. Ripples, sand, sticks. Some of these are USGS, which is US Geological Survey. They're like architectural renderings, stippling, like bedrock. And you'll notice every time I've clicked on a pattern, like I clicked this one right here, sewage disposal. I don't know why that's sewage disposal, but okay. It gets added to my Swatches panel automatically, whether I like it or not. Okay. Every time I click on a previous one, it just reselects that on my Swatches panel. And the whole point of that is I can close this, but they will stay on my Swatches panel. Okay, again, I'm going to click Swatch Libraries, come down to Patterns, Decorative, and Decorative Legacy are like old wallpaper patterns like that, or old rug designs. So you can keep clicking on these and see what they do. Got some pretty interesting ones here. That's like an MC Escher kind of pattern. And they're pretty intricate, pretty cool, some of them. Okay, and those keep getting added to the list. Now notice if I close this and I come back to Swatch Libraries, Patterns, Decorative, Vonster, notice this panel keeps remembering the old ones that I looked at from before as well. Okay, so it's always going to recall what you've been doing. So now Vonster patterns are these larger, more elaborate patterns. I'll hit Command and minus a couple of times so you can really see these larger shaped pattern designs called Vonster patterns. And some pretty interesting stuff here. And then I'll just leave this open because it's going to keep popping up anyway. So I'll click the Swatch Libraries, Patterns, Nature. I have animal skins, like these kind of patterns right here. Snake patterns, tiger, and zebra. And I'll go to Swatch Libraries one more time. Patterns, Nature, and Foliage. Plant-based patterns. So bamboo. And this one is always going to show you a color version and then a black and white. So right here, blossoms color, blossoms black and white. Cattails color, cattails black and white. So these always alternate here. Here's, what is this? Floral vines color, floral vines black and white. Fall leaves. I don't know if that's, oh, fall leaves, and that's totally different ones. So now they start breaking up into individual patterns. But the first ones are color, black and white color. And then you can see right here, there's a color version. There's a black and white. There's a black and white. There's color. And they go back and forth. Color, black and white. Okay. All of these. Now I can close this, and now you know the basic categories of patterns. All of these that I clicked on have now been added to my Swatches panel for this Adobe Illustrator file. Okay, and to prove that they get added only to a particular Illustrator file is when I close this untitled file and I don't need to save it. When I come back to our homework, notice my Swatches panel is totally reset. So every new pattern that you design or you try out is going to be saved on your swatches for that particular Illustrator file. So just be aware of that. Okay, our goal is to design our own patterns. So I'm just going to zoom in right above the page, right here. And I'm going to start with a basic shape, like a circle, an ellipse. Okay, what you need to keep in mind about a pattern is a piece of artwork that repeats itself over and over and over across an area. So I would not want to hold shift and draw a big circle. Okay, because that circle can only repeat itself 2, maybe 2.5 times across this page, and only 4 or 5 times down. That would be like going into Home Depot and buying a 3-foot long tile for your bathroom floor. You're just not going to have a lot of tiles. Okay, so your artwork needs to be small. So I'm going to go to my ellipse tool, hold shift, and drag a small ellipse like that. And just so I can see things more clearly, I'm going to click this curved arrow right underneath the zoom tool. So I make a black ellipse. I'll click on the white stroke and hit the question mark key. So we're just going to start with the most basic, just a tiny circle. Okay, what I'm going to do is click on that with the black arrow, and the way you turn that into a pattern is Object Menu, Pattern, Make. And three things are going to happen on your screen. So when I click Make, first, it gets added to your Swatches panel automatically because patterns are saved on your Swatches panel. Second, it gives you this set of instructions. Your new pattern has been added, but any changes you make while in pattern editing mode will be applied and updated to this circle. So you have no choice. You got to click OK. And you have your pattern options panel. Now, it doesn't matter where your panel or your pattern lands on the page. Like here, it landed in between these pages. I don't care about that. I can still see the pattern just fine. So what I would recommend is you zoom in on it. Okay, and what you're going to get is a list of options on your pattern options panel. Okay, right here, you can name your pattern, but I'm not going to bother naming it. I can see it right here on my swatches. You have a tile. Okay, the tile is this blue outline around your original piece of art. So you have a grid which lines up left and right, up and down. You have brick by row, which offsets every other row by half of its length. So you can see where they meet right here. It meets in the center of this one, like you would stack bricks on a wall. You also have brick by column, which does it vertically. You have hex by column. Now your tile has turned into a hexagon, and my favorite is hex by row. Okay. Right down below, I don't mess with the width and the height. I don't type in values. That's the measurement on this. Those will automatically update. Right down here, you have overlap, which I'll show you in a minute. You can't really see overlapping if your artwork is solid, so we'll skip that for now. And right down below, you have copies. Copies is the preview that you're seeing. 5 copies down, or 5 copies across, 5 copies down. You could set it to 7 by 7 or 9 by 9 if you really want to get a good feel for what your pattern is doing. I don't know who in the world designed 1 by 1. You wouldn't even see your pattern. That's really stupid. But the default is 5 by 5, which should give you enough of an idea what your pattern will look like. Okay, right up here, you have your pattern tile tool. Again, that is the blue outline. So if I have hex by row, notice how this blue tile is a little bit smaller than the circle, which means my circles are going to be crashing into each other. Okay, if I click pattern tile tool, that will activate this blue tile. If I pull this corner away from the circle, I will have more space around the circle. If the tile is bigger, it adds space. So I'll keep adding more space, more space, more space, more space. So all of this empty space in the tile is the empty space in your pattern. Subtract the amount of space, you have subtracted the amount of space around your pattern. Okay, so that's how the tile works. The other thing that is really great is once you are done with a pattern, right up here in this thin gray box, you can click Done. Okay, that just takes you back out to your regular artwork. I can go to my zoom tool and Option or Alt click. So there's the original artwork. I can take my black arrow, select one rectangle, and you want to make sure you are on the fill because patterns can go around the outlines, which you won't really see because the outline is really thin. So you want to click on the fill. One click on my pattern shows me the pattern that I have designed. Now let's say, for argument's sake, I decide, darn it, I should have made that a red pattern, not black. Black is too boring. I should have made this red. But I don't want to have to start all over again. And the brilliant thing is you don't have to. So I'm going to click outside. I can delete this circle. Don't need it anymore. But I want my pattern to be red, not black. Okay, all you have to do is go to your swatches, double click on this pattern, and you're right back into pattern editing mode. So now I can zoom in on this black circle that I started with. I'll click on it, click on the fill, and I'll fill it red. Now when I click done, my page has automatically been updated as a red pattern. Okay, if I want to do even more with this, and I want to keep this, but I also want to show a variation, what you can do is, because notice we lost the black pattern, so it's always going to update what you have. If I wanted to keep this red circle pattern, but also show a variation of it, I click once on my pattern, go to the pop-up menu on my swatches, and say duplicate the swatch. So now I have a copy. So I can keep the original red circles, but then experiment and do a variation on a copy of that pattern. And that's what I'm going to do here. Double click. Now I can zoom in. And what I'm going to do is stack a series of circles on top of each other. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to View, Smart Guides, View, Snap to Point. Now with my black arrow, I click on this red circle and I'm going to pick the darkest red right there. Okay, what I do is go to my ellipse tool, command click outside, so I deselect that one. Now I pick a slightly brighter, let's go with this one here. Hover over the center, shift key and option key, and I'll draw a slightly lighter circle. So you can keep adding artwork to your pattern. It's very, very flexible and updatable. Command click to deselect that one, pick a lighter one, hover over the center, shift and option, command click, switch color, go to the center, command or shift and option, shift key and option key, command click to deselect, switch my color, hover over the center, shift and option, command click, pick a last color right here, hold shift and option, and we'll draw some circles, command click. So you can add multiple shapes to a pattern, like we've done there. Okay, I'm going to click done, and notice again when we zoom out, I still retain my original pattern because I made a duplicate. So now I can select this second rectangle, make sure I'm on the fill, and try that. Okay, and that looks okay, but I want to add even more to this pattern. So again, you double click, you go right back into pattern editing mode, and I'm going to zoom in again. Okay, and now I'm always on my black arrow. I'm going to click the pattern tile tool in the upper left corner, and now I'm going to make my hexagon smaller than the circle, and they will start to overlap. A hexagon that is smaller means your artwork will overlap. If I make it even smaller, now they really start to crisscross. So I can pull the side to the side of the circle, pull this side to the side of the circle right there, and they kind of just meet, like kissing each other at the edges. I'll pull this down a little bit, and they kind of overlap right in here, like scales on a goldfish. Okay, so you also have an overlap set. So again, if I click my pattern tile and I pull this over so they're overlapping left and right and up and down, you can see right here, the left is in front. So it's like walking down a set of stairs or walking up. This one goes on top, on top, on top, on top. If I click here, they reverse their stacking order. And what's even more amazing on your patterns is top is in front. So it's like walking down, lower, 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 lower. But if I click the other overlap, they're like eggs in a basket. Okay, and I kind of like that, like the rising sun at sunset versus scales on a goldfish. Totally different look to my pattern. So when your pattern tile is smaller than the artwork itself, you get this overlapping design, which can create some really cool effects. I'll click done. Now I can see all these overlapping effects right here. And one little glitch that's been in Illustrator forever that you have to keep in mind is these little lines that show up. So when I zoom in, you can see these little crossing lines right here. Okay, that is a glitch on your screen. Because this pattern, all these circles, they're not really there. If I go to view and outline, there are no circles. Okay, all of these are previews that are linked to this setting for this pattern in my swatches panel. So it's showing you the effect, the preview of what your pattern would look like. View, preview. If Illustrator had to render or generate thousands of circles, that would be a really big Illustrator file. So it shows you a link or a preview. When I zoom in, some of these lines will start to fade away. Then I zoom in, now the verticals fade away, then I zoom in. Okay, it's always going to be there. It's just a glitch that has never disappeared in Illustrator. So right here, I can see this little horizontal white gap, but when I zoom in, now it's gone. Okay, so these are previews on your screen. They always happen, so just be aware of that. We designed a pattern with circles. We never made straight lines in our pattern, so you got to keep that in mind. Okay, so that's another way to deal with patterns. You can also start with your own artwork and generate multiple pieces. So out here on this third one, I'm going to hit D for default colors. I'm going to switch this curved arrow again so I have a black shape. And we'll keep the white outline just for argument's sake. And I'm going to come in with another ellipse. Shift key and Option key. We'll start with a small circle like that. And I'm going to zoom in. So now, instead of designing it while I'm in pattern editing mode, I'm going to design it right out here on my page. So what I'm going to do is every time I click outside, I'm going to click the curved arrow, switch my colors. Now I'll take the ellipse, there's my smart guides, Shift and Option, we'll go like that. Command click, click the curved arrow. I'll do another circle right here, maybe smaller like that. Command click, and then I'm going to keep it there because now I can go right up here, right in the middle of this white. Shift key and Option key. We'll do a circle like that. There we go. Now I'm going to take my black arrow. I'll click and drag straight down, hold Shift to come down, Option for a copy, and I'll let go of the mouse. Now I'm going to click once on this little circle, Shift click this little circle. Right over here is my rotate tool. So if I double click on the rotate tool, I'm going to type a degree of 45 degrees. So you'll see it'll rotate it like that. I'm going to copy 45 degrees. And then I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate 45 degrees. Command D to duplicate 45 degrees. Okay, so I can add a bunch of artwork to this. Then on top of that, I'm going to come in with my ellipse. Right here at the top of the circle, Shift key and Option key will make a circle like that. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to click and drag with my black arrow all the way down. Hold Shift to come down, Option key for a copy, and I let go of the mouse. I'm going to click on this bottom circle, Shift click the top circle, and I'll do those same rotations again. Double click, copy, Command D, Command D. So I can stack multiple shapes to start my pattern. And now that I look at that, it's all black and white. So I'm going to click on this white circle, and instead of it also being white, maybe I'll make it red. So have a design like that, or green or blue, whatever you want. Now, with multiple shapes, okay, the secret to this is all your shapes have to be filled with either a solid color or they can be filled with a gradient. You cannot fill artwork with a pattern and then try to turn a pattern into a pattern. Okay, so even if I clicked on one circle and filled that with my pattern, if I selected all of this and said Object, Pattern, Make, I will get an error. Patterns cannot contain anything painted with a pattern. Okay, they got to be all solid colors or gradients, or a mix, solid, gradient, but you cannot have patterns within the artwork that you want to turn into a pattern. So we'll just go back to black. So you could have 50 shapes, 20, whatever you want, as long as they're solid colors or gradients. So I'm going to select all of this, and let's see what that will look like. Object menu, Pattern, Make. Now it works. I'll click OK. And I'm going to hit Command and minus just so I can zoom out and see what that pattern looks like. I don't like how they're going left and right, up and down, so I'm going to say brick by row. There we go. I don't like this space in between all these, look like little molecules here. So I'm going to click my pattern tile tool, and I'm just going to pull the top edge down. See if I can pull that down. It won't work. See if I can pull the bottom edge up. Doesn't work, so you got to go from the corners. I'll pull this down right there. Now I've decreased the amount of space. Maybe pull this over a little bit. So I'm getting the same amount of space between these circles here, but I've tightened up the space. And let's pull this down just a little bit more. There we go. Kind of tighten up the spacing there. All right, I like that. I click done. I'll zoom out. Option click with my zoom tool. Select the rectangle. Make sure I'm on the fill. And I'll fill that with this little molecular pattern right there. Okay, one of the other things you got to keep in mind is when you design a pattern with spaces around it, like all this negative space, that is empty space. That is not white. Okay, and let me show you how you can tell. I'm going to click outside, hit D for default colors, and instead of white, I'm going to select blue. I'm going to draw a big ellipse like that. And then I can say Object menu, Arrange, Send to Back. And notice you can see right through the pattern. Okay, like that. So patterns have empty or transparent space. Now, if you wanted to put a pattern here, but you don't want to see through it, like we're seeing right here, the trick would be to go to your Appearance panel. Right over here is my Appearance panel. If you don't see it on your screen, you can go to Window and Appearance, but I can see it right there. So now here's my fill with my pattern. I always click and close these little triangles. And if I don't want to see through that, I can click the pop-up. Let's get this over in my tutorial here. Click the pop-up, add another new fill. The bottom fill I can fill with blue, or I can fill it with white. Okay, we'll just fill a white fill behind my pattern. So now when I click outside and try that blue again, we'll draw an ellipse, object, arrange, send to back, and now I cannot see through my pattern because I fill the white wall behind that. Okay, so just be aware that patterns have transparency. Okay, the other way you can make patterns is designing the old-fashioned way to create something called a seamless pattern. So I'm going to show you that for these last two. Okay, I'll just zoom in at the bottom of the page here, and I'm going to hit D for default colors. And what you do, the way you design patterns in the past, is you start with a rectangle or a square. So I'm just going to hold shift and draw a little square right there. Again, your pattern should start as a small piece of artwork. Okay, what you want to do is fill that with a starting color. So I'm going to fill that red. But the main key is no black outline. Otherwise, the black outline will become part of your pattern and it will look like the grout between tiles on your floor. Okay, so we don't want a black outline becoming part of our pattern. So I'm going to click on the black, hit the question mark key, and then to prepare, I'm going to click back on the fill because I'm going to fill other artwork here in a minute. But seamless patterns, you start with a basic square. Think of it as buying a tile at a Home Depot store. Okay, tiles are squares. So I'm going to start with a flat colored square and then go to Object menu, Pattern, Make. And I'll click OK. I just got 5 by 5 squares. Okay, but you could see the basic shape of the square right here with my tile. So what I'm going to do is zoom in on this, and there are only 2 rules you need to keep in mind. So first, I'm going to click outside with my black arrow, deselect it, and then change my color fill to black. Then I'm going to switch to my ellipse tool, and here are the 2 rules. You cannot drag anything and hit the left side because it will cut your artwork in half. Anything that hits the left side of that square is going to be cut in half. So I have to delete that. Anything that hits the top of that square will be cut in half. So I'll delete that. Okay, anything that hits the right side, so I'll hold shift, draw a circle right there. Anything that hits the right will exit at the same point on the left. Okay, enter from the right, you exit on the left. Enter from the bottom, you exit at the top. So as long as I start with a square, like I've done here, I can hit the right side, the bottom side, or inside. Okay, so I'm going to hold shift and just draw a bunch of circles, just making sure they never hit the left edge and they never hit the top edge. But I can go right in here near the corner. I can go past the bottom. I can go along the bottom, inside, inside, bottom and right, inside, inside, inside. I don't want to hit the left because that's what's going to screw it up. So I'm just going to keep holding shift, draw a bunch of circles in here. I can hit the right. I can draw inside and fill all these little gaps right here with little circles. Shift, 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 and draw a bunch of circles here. And there's my bubbly little pattern. Okay, I can take my black arrow. I don't like how these 2 are touching, so let's just move that over a little bit. So none of them are touching. And we'll move this down. Now that's a lot of little black bubbles. So after I have laid everything out, I can go back in and start messing around with colors. So I'm going to click this one and then hold Shift and just randomly select a few other ones. Shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click. Whoops, accidentally bumped those. Shift click. And I'll make those yellow. Or actually, let's make those white. Okay. Now I can click, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, and maybe we'll make those green. Just kind of sprinkle it up. And now when I click done, I can zoom out, option click with my zoom tool, select this large rectangle, make sure I'm on the fill, and there's my next pattern right there. Cool. Okay, so your goal is to create 5 brand new patterns of your own design using the techniques that I just showed you. Okay, that's how you generate patterns, and those will be saved on your swatches with this Illustrator file. So again, to prove that, if I went to File and New, and I just click Create, those are gone. Okay, but if I close this untitled file, now they're back because they're part of this file. So here's the last thing you got to understand about patterns. Now that I have generated them, let's say on this pattern I want to see more of these, but they're kind of big. They look kind of blocky. I don't see enough of the pattern. These circles were small, so I'm seeing a lot of those. I'm only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these across, and I want to see more. Okay, again, without redesigning the whole pattern, I can take my black arrow, click anywhere on this rectangle, and right next to my rotate, I have a scale tool. Okay, I'm going to double click on the scale, and right down here, it asks me for a transformation. What am I trying to scale or transform? I'm trying to transform the pattern, not the object, not the rectangle. So I turn that off. I want to keep the object or the rectangle the same size. I'm trying to transform the pattern inside of it. Right up here, I'm going to shrink that pattern by, let's say, 60%, and I preview. Let's preview that, and nothing's happening. So I'm going to click cancel. Let's see what's going on here. Select it, double click, 60%, transform my pattern. Why is that not working? Let me click OK. Okay. My transform is not working on this demo. That is really weird. So let me try it on these circles here. Select, double click. There we go. That was weird. Okay. Here's before and there's after. Transforming the pattern right there. Okay. So I can transform that down to 20%, and you can see what that does. I'll click OK. Why not? But I'm going to hold my spacebar and come over to this goofy one. I don't know why that wasn't transforming here. So let's try it again. Select. Oh, okay. I remember what it was doing. Remember that we were working on our appearance panel. Okay, I added a white fill under my pattern. So on my appearance panel, I got to select the pattern fill. Let's see if that affects it. Double click scale. That was it. See, that's why I'm the teacher. Okay, I had to scale the fill. So let's say 50%. Preview. There's before where they're big. There's after. I can click OK. So again, down here, or let's go with these goldfish scales. When I selected that, there was only one fill. That's why this one was acting kind of goofy. So keep that in mind. Okay, if you do multiple fills on your appearance, you gotta select the fill. Had a moment of panic there, but I figured it out. All right, so down here, if I selected this, There's only one fill on my appearance panel. Double click, and maybe I want those to be 150%. Now there's the beginning and there's after. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to show you is not only can you transform the size of your patterns, you can also rotate your patterns. So I'm going to try it on these goldfish again, these goldfish pattern. If I select it, it's got one fill. I've shown you how you can scale a pattern, but right next to that is your rotate tool. I can double click. I do not want to rotate the object. So I don't want to rotate the rectangle. So I do not transform the object. I transform the pattern. So here I can type 30 degrees, preview, there's before and there's after. You can rotate. I can rotate that 45 degrees. I rotate it a little more, like that, and I click OK. The last trick that I want you to be aware of is how to move a pattern inside of a shape. So again, I'll select this, and on my black arrow, on my keyboard, near the upper left corner is your escape key, but don't hit that. Underneath the escape key is a little key with a squiggle on it. Most keyboards, it's right next to the number 1 underneath the escape key. If I hold that squiggle key, it's called your tilde, T-I-L-D-E, tilde. If I hold down the tilde key, and now I hold down the right arrow key on my keyboard, I can nudge my pattern to the right. So I can kind of push it around and get it to fill the way I want it to fill. Or if I hold the tilde key and hit the down arrow, I can slowly nudge my pattern fill down into the shape, like that. So you can slowly nudge a pattern with the tilde key and your arrow keys. You can rotate patterns by double clicking, transform your pattern, not the object. You can scale a pattern, transforming the pattern size, not the object. You can double click a pattern and totally edit the colors. So I'll do that one more time right here. Maybe on the last outer circle, instead of red, I'll make it blue. Click done. And now it has been updated for my page. So your goal is to create 5 brand new patterns, not necessarily the ones that I just did, because those are my ideas. Show me what you can be coming up with, what you can be creative with. Maybe do 3 of them based on drawing the shapes. Maybe do 2 of them based on starting with a rectangle. I look forward to seeing what you can come up with, and that's the way you deal with patterns. So once you are done, or what I would technically have done is save after every rectangle. Should have said that in the beginning, but once you're done, you're going to go to File, Save As, save it with your last name, your first name, and patterns. So I know whose that is. So when you turn that in for a class, I can grade it. Last name, first name, patterns. And again, I look forward to seeing what you can come up with creatively. That's how you deal with patterns in Illustrator.